Good evening and welcome back to the Ask Dr. Renee show here at Black Doctor. And today is a special show because, usually I'm on Thursday nights, but tonight we're on Wednesday night. So, in recognition of National Gay Men's HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, tonight on the Ask Dr. Renee show, we decided to have a conversation that is not happening at barbershops, churches, or around the dinner table. And that is a much needed conversation of the impact of cis heterosexual men who unapologetically are deeply connected allies for the gay brothers and have committed their life journey, both personal and professional, to work that directly impacts their very lives. So to have this conversation are three powerful Black men: Reggie Smith, based in Atlanta; Louis Shackelford, based in Seattle, Washington; and joining us a bit later is Kendall Moore, based in Chicago, Illinois. Well, let's see. Can we start by each of you telling us a little bit about your background and the work that you do supporting your gay brothers? And we will start with you, Louis.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate this opportunity. My name is Louis Shackelford, as mentioned before, he, him pronouns, and I am the acting director of external relations at the HIV Vaccine Trials Network based out of Seattle, Washington. So my work over the past decade and a half almost has been focused on HIV research, specifically community engagement in HIV research. So being that bridge between the community and the science has been a hallmark of my work in the past decade and a half, as I mentioned. And it's been a joy to work very, very closely with all of my colleagues and all the community members in the LGBTQIA plus community. I've grown as a person, I've grown as a man, and I wouldn't be the person that I am today without my community, which to me always includes the LGBTQIA plus community. And so I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. And Reggie?
Yes, so my name is Reggie Smith, and thank you for having me, Dr. Renee. I am the executive director of the Reginald and Dion Smith Foundation, and our mission is to provide for the wellness, awareness, and restoration of Black people who are highly impacted by HIV, viral hepatitis, and substance use disorders, particularly in rural and southern communities in the United States. I have been an advocate for families affected by HIV since 2012. Our foundation started, but I've been doing this work since farther than I can remember. I was actually diagnosed myself in 1988 and probably contracted HIV in 1984 and 85. And so as a husband and a father, grandfather, I've had to find my information and resources right alongside my LGBTQIA plus brothers. And so, it's been a wonderful journey, but it's been a very interesting journey because of the stigma that's surrounding HIV. And I have been really an advocate to try to get my hetero brothers and sisters to dispel and to kind of diminish the stigma surrounding HIV so that they can get the information that has made it possible for me to, to thrive actually all these many years. And so I've seen way too many family and friends perish as a result of ignorance or lack of information. And so, yes, I've forged many, many relationships in the community, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to do so and continue to do so. So I'm glad to have this conversation because, as you said, it's a conversation that is much needed, and we really need to stop a lot of what I like to call nonsense regarding HIV and stigma.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Louis, you mentioned growing as a person by virtue of doing, as a matter of fact, Kendall just came on, so let's let him introduce himself. Good evening, Kendall.
Good evening, Dr. Renee and others. How are you?
Great.
Hey,
We just did the other two introductions, so you're just in time to introduce yourself.
Fantastic. Well, my name is Kendall Moore. I am part of multiple organizations. Primarily, I've been working in infectious diseases for a little bit over 30 years. I have a communications, TV, and radio background. Proud member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And I'm currently a part of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation family.
Thank you so much. Okay, so Lewis, you mentioned growing as a person by the virtue of doing this work in connection with your LGBTQIA plus colleagues. Can you speak a bit more about that?
Sure. So, as I said, I wouldn't be the person I am today without my community, and my community includes the LGBTQIA plus community. Um, and that's just simply because, you know, I grew up I grew up in Harlem, New York, back in the 90s, and I grew up in a single parent household. I raised by my mom, and so the greatest relationships I have with other Black men have been, you know, Black men who identify as queer, and they have been supportive of me and have just expressed their love and appreciation for me being a part of this work from the very beginning. They kind of took me in. I always tell people that I didn't learn how to do work in HIV research or just work in the LGBTQIA plus community in general from a degree or from a particular book or anything. I learned it from the community. I learned it from people teaching me and helping me grow in this work. And so I literally would not be in this space that I am today without, my Black queer colleagues, my, Black women of trans experience and Black men of trans experience and gender nonconforming folks that have all poured into me and loved on me throughout the years to create the man that you see today. That, and just in being in community with queer folks, just allowed me to just kind of bask in the pride and the determination and resiliency that I see in the community every single day, that the community has to show every single day, particularly Black queer folks. And that always rubbed off on me. And so if this person who is gender nonconforming, is walking down the street and is able to do so defiantly and proudly, why can't I walk down the street with my head held high as a Black man? And so those are some of the lessons that I take from being in community, and they've made me a better person.
That's wonderful. Reggie, you brought up stigma. Can you talk about what addressing stigma looks like, knowing that this is widely known as a leading contributor to the disproportionate increase of new HIV diagnosis among Black Americans?
well, a lot of times we say stigma, and I don't know that we're all thinking about the same thing or have the same definition of stigma when we speak about it. For me, stigma is being more concerned about what other people think about me than I am about what I think about myself. My experience has been that people are stigmatized when they are afraid of being identified. Well, the heteros community is afraid of being identified as gay, and in a lot of instances that has to do, that's more of a personal issue, but it's not the most important issue. If we know that sexual identity plays a part in terms of the mode of transmission for HIV. If you believe that HIV is transmitted through sex or through IV drug use, then that's important to know based on a person's lifestyle. Other than that, it really has no, it should not play a part, and it's irrational that we would put ourselves at risk or that we would love a person less based on their sexual identity. I think that stigma plays an extremely large part. What we found is that as a result of the disproportionate effect that HIV has had on the LGBTQIA plus community, that there was resources and that were put into making sure that people were aware so that we could stop the transmission and so that we can save lives. And that was important. And it continues to be important. But what we've found as a person who's been living with HIV since the 80s, and known many hetero people who have contracted the virus or continue to put themselves at risk, that we need to have these conversations in the context of life and death and protecting the family as opposed to sexual identity. To be quite blunt with you, if your ass is on fire, where's the water? I knew where the water was, and I went where the water was, and the water was in the LGBTQIA plus community. Now, I like what you just said, and as it pertains to walking proudly, and there's rightfully so, because of the reaction of the general population. There was a lot of backlash, and there's probably a lot of resentment around the lack of caring. I felt it too, because when HIV was first, beginning to be understood, there was no medications or anything like that. There was a lot of fear, and people treated us in ways that was, less than human. And so, there's a lot of resentment, but we kind of have to, get past that now. If we intend to end the epidemic by 2030, I think that it's really important now that we all come together. I mean, now more than ever, especially with all of the different treatments that are available and all the different ways that we can stop the transmission, the more we know. So, the last vestiges of stigma are still having an enormous effect on our community, and we just need to stop it.
Definitely, especially when you look at the transmission, from men to women, the numbers are a lot higher. And so it can't be called, people who say stupid stuff that has no bearing. There's no proof behind that. So it's like,
well, Dr. Renee, the one of the big issues that I'm finding, and we're finding, is that there's no data around heterosexual Black men. But we do know that heterosexual Black women are the fastest, or amongst the fastest rate of new infections. And they are purporting to be contracting the virus heterosexually. So where are they getting it from? So we've created a lot of false narratives around what we expect of people's sexuality, the whole down low syndrome, and all of that. And there's a lot of attempts to define our sexuality that are important for self-identity, but not necessarily important as we engage with each other as human beings. And so, I just need, we're working very hard to shift the dominant narrative around HIV, that HIV is a gay disease, and the narrative that's kind of supported by a lot of the commercials, the pharmaceuticals, and a lot of the things that we see in media kind of surreptitiously support that dominant narrative. And so we are glad to have these conversations and glad to start changing some of the imagery and the messaging around HIV so that all can feel included, and that maybe that will help soften some of the past resentments or whatever it is that's keeping us separated.
Can I just very quickly add that, two of the biggest drivers of stigma are transphobia and homophobia.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important that we call that out, and that, there are forces that are just irrationally, opposed to anything trans, anything same gender loving. And so it's really important, I think, as cisgender heterosexual men, for us to call that out so can see it not just in our own lives, but also see in the ways that it permeates throughout our culture, throughout our community, because we are still battling transphobia and homophobia in major ways, even in this day and age.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah, I agree.
exactly. So, Kendall, we want to bring you into this conversation as you represent two key groups that can either be viewed as a sense of support or further perpetuating ignorance and stigma around our gay brothers. That is the media and our Black fraternities. Can you first speak to how, as a heterosexual media personality, how have you used your platform and your voice to address this issue of stigma? And as a member of a Black fraternity, especially one that has been stigmatized as being hyper-masculine, how have you addressed the stigma and how have you seen it handled when your gay brothers pledge the frat?
Absolutely. Thank you guys again for allowing me to be a part of this platform. I would like to begin as far as the media is concerned. Having gotten involved in HIV and AIDS right after college, it put me in a space where I had to learn very quickly what that community, what it involved, what it actually entailed. I had a crash course on just the different modes and operating systems that exist within those specific ecosystems, and from that platform and from those teachings and direct learning, it allowed me to uh, get a better understanding of where we are comprehensively as individuals. And so while my focus has not been so much on sexuality, my focus lies deeply within just being a Black man, period. And so many
Mhm.
things that we have had to struggle through and because of the color of our skin, including but not limited to one sexuality, among other things. And with the media and that platform, what it allowed me to do is really take a look at what was the silver lining. And it still allows me to do that to this day. What is the silver lining that connects us as brothers? And so while this group wants, when I say this group, it's not to be offensive, but that's just the way I talk. This group's it wants to be acknowledged and recognized. Another group is fighting for something completely different. This person is talking apples, this person is talking oranges, and at the end of the day, there's still poverty, there's still high incarceration, there's still misogyny. In every crescent, in essence, of our Black existence, especially as a Black male heterosexual in the media, it is extremely important to allow the narratives to be had so that all men can be heard from the seat and the space of which they believe. I've been afforded the opportunity of having great guests, participating in great think tanks, uh, dealing with young folks who don't know how to identify, dealing with homeless youth, dealing with doctors, PhDs, MPHs who they know the terrain. So they have the language, they know how to speak it, but it's being missed on the younger generations. And it has been. And to some of the brothers' points, just like with the current commercials that are running right now relative to the pharmaceutical companies, the conversations that are being had inside of the barbershops, where it really isn't a safe space for you to come out and say whatever your sexuality is, there's definitely an opportunity for for you to be attacked in many different ways, and the same applies via in the media as well. I have countless stories of being hit on by other black men, thinking that I was either on the down low or that I was gay. And, those are teachable moments for me, be it the media, and then I'm going to move to the fraternity as well, to say, hey, no, that's not this, not right here, because I'm able to show you love as a black man and as a brother. That doesn't necessarily mean this is how I identify, but it's very important for you to know that I support you and I love you because of who you are, because other institutions and other forms of what our community looks like does not do that. And that is with sexuality and anything else across the board. And so in that, I'm saying, I've seen gay guys criticize and literally beat other gay guys, right? And it's like, well, what is that about? I've seen those who don't want to self-identify experience, the same type of actions against them. But to bring it back to the space that you asked a question, the media is a monster. And again, there's countless experiences that I have, that some of my heterosexual brothers who are in radio, just 2 years ago, I don't want to name any names. It was just a huge thing as it relates to it. Moving from that space to the fraternity, I oftentimes have great conversations with my fraternity brothers and men of other fraternities as well. Folks who know me know that I'm a member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, proudly, have been for going on 30 years now. And so I've seen many iterations on what the response is when it comes to black men loving each other, and not from just one space. It's not about definitions. It's not about how many letters that you have behind your name. It's not about recruiting others to support what you believe in or what your belief system is relative to how you as an individual feel, how others should treat you, and how the world should be viewed. That is very skewed. Even to this day, the fraternities have changed 20-fold, 30-fold. They're no longer monolithic organizations that operate separately. We're experiencing from a brother supporting another brother, same gender loving brother, a cis-identifying brother, etc. In all of those spaces, there's a huge component of not truly being understood, not truly being loved, not truly being seen, and not truly being heard. And so part of why I continue to operate in the space that I do from an HIV/AIDS standpoint, as well as loving Black people, especially Black men, as Black men. Mm-hmm. If we don't do that for ourselves, no one will. And I know that firsthand.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're right. I know that each of you are in heterosexual marriages. If you don't mind, can you speak to how your wife or other women in your lives have been supportive to the work that you are each doing, knowing the stigma and ignorance that we have been speaking about? Whoever wants to go first.
Wow, I just had to look over my shoulder to make sure she wasn't there, first of all. She usually is. My wife Dion and I have been together for 38 years. Um, we found out that I was HIV positive and that I had contracted AIDS in 1988 when we got pregnant. So we immediately went to go and see, first of all, once she got pregnant. I was an IV drug user back in south side of Jamaica, Queens, Lewis, back in the 70s and the 80s. And but didn't think about it. I was blessed to find recovery in 1985. And so I had been clean for 3 years prior to us getting pregnant. And when we went and got tested, thank God, found out she was negative, and that meant that our son to be was going to be okay. But I was diagnosed with AIDS, hepatitis C, and I had already, been in recovery from substance use disorder. She has been very, very supportive. I mean, heroically supportive. She has never left my side. She has, we went through a number of changes, of course, because the disease is sexually transmitted. So we protected her and used condoms for many, many, many years until recently we've learned that when you're undetectable, that the virus is untransmittable. There were many years when there was no medications or anything. She still loved me. We didn't tell our parents, my folks or anybody, the kids or anyone, for the first 14 or 15 years. But she had to set up a support system for herself, and we got past a lot of course we heard a lot because people didn't know what our situation was, but when we finally did disclose was more of an issue. It became an issue for our relationship because she was more afraid of what people were going to say about her. I felt like damaged goods, but they she was getting questions about, why would you stay with him, why would you stay with him? And so, it really caused a lot of stress in our relationship. I thought that I was going to have to leave her if I loved her enough. I would have to leave her because there came a point when, after watching, and I have a communications background as myself, and I was doing radio and, was sharing love and sharing from the higher principles. But, I still was watching friends and family perish as a result of AIDS and HIV and ignorance. And so I just wanted to share some of the things that I had done and that my wife was supporting me with. And I was compelled to do so. And in doing so, it just caused more friction for our relationship. And I thought I was going to have to leave her, but the stress of thinking that I was going to leave her after, it must have been about 20 years at that point, caused me to get sick. I was actually down to 116 pounds. All my organs had shut down. And it was the Lazarus moment that many people who suffer or that live with HIV go through. And they told my family that if I lived another 3 days, that it would be a miracle. And that was in 2005. And so I guess I say all of that to say that my wife now is she's the deputy director of our foundation. She has found her voice, and she's done that a long time ago. And her voice is for women and other people who are in relationships with people that are positive or want to be, people that are impacted, family members. She just has an empathy around those issues that is, heroic. I'll say that again. And so I can't say enough about my wife. I love her dearly, and I'm extremely grateful for her.
That is remarkable. Who's next?
I mean, those are my sentiments exactly, Reggie. Black women have been the most influential people in my life to this day. And my wife sits as chief among them. So we've been married for 11 years now, been together for 14. So still a ways away from you and your wife, Reggie. But I'm just as thankful for my wife, my partner. I used to call her my life support in the most literal sense of the way, of that term, because she's been extremely supportive, and she gives me She gives me the opportunity to go out and make deep, fulfilling connections with Black gay men, with trans women, with, gender nonconforming mass people. And I still have peace at home. And she doesn't question my sexuality. She doesn't question who I am as a man. She doesn't question my relationship to her. All of those things give me the space to form these relationships and grow and learn and love people that society tells me I should probably not even really be even been talking to. She gives me that space, and then I get to come home to her and find peace, which is extremely supportive to me, and I know it's extremely important to many people at partners. It's the chief most important thing to me is just having peace at home, because next to having peace within myself, it's having peace at home, which is two of the things that I have to have in order to live and to function well in this world. And so without my wife, I would not be able to go and have these relationships. And the fact that she allows me the space to do that and grow, as I said, and grow and love people of all different gender backgrounds, of all different sexual orientations, it's been amazing. And then, but I would say that one of the biggest things that have come out of my work and my relationship to the LGBTQIA plus community has been the growth I've seen within my wife, and just being able to come home and talk to her and share of my relationships and the love that I have for people in my life in the LGBTQIA plus community. Like, it's been amazing, and it's allowed her to grow as well in ways that I don't think she foresaw, considering that she comes from a very conservative background. She's Caribbean. So, she comes from a very, I won't say where she's from, but she comes from a very conservative Caribbean country. And so this has been a journey of learning and growth for her as well. And so that's one of the biggest, if I had accomplishments to list out in my work or in my life, it would be seeing the growth that I was able to spur in my wife and seeing her become even more of a loving person in the most universal way possible. So it's been a great journey to have a partner who is understanding and really accepting of me and trusting of me, um, so that I could grow and form the relationships that really have impacted my life.
That's wonderful. I'm a Caribbean woman myself, so Kendall.
Yeah, a lot of the adjectives that have been used to describe both of the brothers' wives, I don't want to repeat them nor be redundant. The pillar that my wife continues to be for not just me, but for our family is astounding. And I say that for her 20-fold and 100-fold for many of the Black women who continue to be instrumental in my life, because it's all community. My wife's support not only continues to elevate the work that I do, but it helps me better understand what real love is for individuals. And I say that because I'm a man with many different flaws, and I'm reminded every day I walk back into my castle the battles that I have faced to leave it at the door, and we walk through and we talk through some of the things that I have had to face in order to get back to the place for our family. And then I'm able to have conversation with her, and we talk through it together. And she helps me release. There's an entire process, whether I'm here in space with her, or I'm on the road and I'm traveling, it goes without question that Black women are the essence of these worlds. There's never been a time or space that I have thought anything differently. I certainly know that there are roles, and in today's society, they're so combined and mixed, and everybody wants to be right. I don't care what color you are, what religion you are, what sexuality you are, what political party you are a part of. So many people want to be right. And with that, I'm often reminded by my wife to remain humble and to stay prayed up and to have faith in who we are and what we are about, so that I can carry on the mission that I have, the assignment that I have been given. And my assignment, I tell you, we don't even have enough time for the footage on this. Just barely, you know, breaching the topic of it. But without her, it's not necessary. It's not possible. Especially having worked in this field for as long as I have worked in this field. Again, I'll remind you, and I'm not saying it in any type of way other than in the way that I'm saying it. Frequently get hit on, frequently labeled something that I'm not, frequently challenged in my own manhood, even by some of my closest friends, fraternity brothers, when we talk about the toxic masculinity, to be able to come and not just unload, but to talk through what those feelings are like for me. It's immeasurable. And for most of my professional career, it's been Black women specific who have been those persons who have stood me up, stood behind me, put both of my arms around them as like a football player being carried off of the field, which is why I'm so intimately, uh, I, I get emotional when I talk about our sisters. But my wife, she has her own pedestal. I'm looking at the time, so I'll defer, but I will say, keep this part of the clip. It's us.
Mhm.
It's us.
In our partnership with the HVTN, we have been doing a lot of discussions around faith and HIV, or faith and stigma. Can you each talk about how your faith has played a role in the work that you are doing, and how have you been able to be a strong voice for standing up when faith has been used as a stigmatizing force against our gay brothers?
I'll go first with this one since we've been going in this clock. I'll start. Because it's very interesting. It's interesting is not the right word to use in this sense, but even to this day, I honestly, truly feel that the Black church has did us wrong in our community. A lot of the pastors here in the city of Chicago, we are acquaintances, but they will share with you what my challenge is with them oftentimes. And the reason I say that is because of my faith. I grew up in the Catholic Church and realized that the Catholic Church wasn't for me by the time I graduated from 8th grade. Ended up going to a Catholic school when I was in high school, and my first day in the Catholic school, and I got a scholarship. I really realized that the Catholic Church wasn't for Black kids at that time. And while I was attending the Catholic Church, my parents, my mom, my grandma, they were taking me to a Baptist church on Sundays. Again, for the sake of time, those are two clashing factions that really did not bode well, which sent me on a spiritual journey as to, you know, what do Black people, what is our connection to God really? Through the travels, there's many great men here, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Those are my fraternity brothers, guys who I've spent time with under them. And then we have people like Father Michael Flager, who I adore the man. A completely different faith, but he acts, he does what he does with all of our people. The point that I am getting at, the confluence of spirituality in our community and sexuality, it is very disparaging. And there's a huge wedge from where I sit, and I'm not afraid to be the one to open my mouth and call some of our religious leaders hypocrites. Because if you can't allow people to be who they are, they tell you to come as you are, not as they want you to be, or not preaching one doctrine, but participating in acts that you're speaking against. And you're supposed to be a man of God. It causes more damage to our system overall. And I attribute to where we are as a people, especially our young folks today, to that. Their roles are very serious, and they have failed miserably in many spaces. And because of that, we have the highest incarceration rate. We have one of the highest murder rates. We have all of this homelessness. We have so many non-believers. Some of the kids today call themselves Martians. And I ask kids, so what does that mean? Well, I don't believe anything. There are other planets. I don't have a sexual organ because I do what I want to do. And it really does. It gets under my skin when I hear future generations describe themselves as such, because it speaks to our elders in our community. Mm-hmm. And I'm not, and everybody not bad, don't get me wrong. But those who are responsible, it has wreaked havoc in the African American community. So at the end of the day, when it comes to my wife and I and our belief in us doing our due diligence on Sundays through Saturdays, we keep the faith in a belief of love, respect, and honoring our ancestors. Dr. Renee, you're going to get me started on the, I don't want to get started. No, you are. I got to stop. I got to stop. I'm done.
Who wants to go next?
I can go next very briefly. I will say that my faith has taught me how to love. And that was the most tremendous thing that I had going into the HIV research field, because I didn't have any background in HIV. I didn't have any background in, I had a very moderate, very small background in research. And I took a job as a peer educator on an HIV research study focused on Black, gay, and bisexual men. And the only thing I was confident in is that I could love the people that came in the door. And that was I directly attribute that to my faith. And without my faith, I would not have that sort of, I would not have had the robust concept of love that I had that propelled me forward in this work. And so when stigma, homophobia, transphobia showed me or told me that I should fear and I should run away or separate, it was love and faith that told me to move forward, to love, to embrace, to bring people in and to bring people closer. And as I said from the very beginning of this conversation, I'm a better man for that. I'm really, excited by a lot of the things that Kendall said, because one of the things he talked about was people being who they are, coming as they are, really embracing people for who they are. And I think it's really important that as cishet men, that we are not reductive of people and their identities, and that we embrace and we celebrate them, celebrate people, particularly in the LGBTQIA plus community, for all that they are and not reducing them. So I know that we sometimes has a tendency to look at things across race and just say, well, we're all Black men, but at the end of the day, my experience as a cishet Black man is very different in many different spaces in this world, in this country, particularly, than a bisexual Black man or a gay Black man or a Black trans woman. And so I have the privilege to walk in spaces and never have to worry about things that my Black gay brothers, that my Black queer brothers, that my Black trans sisters have to worry about all the time. And so it's really important that we embrace people as their full identity and all that they are, because there's so many dimensions to people and in the way that they live life and their experiences that we as cishet men will never see. But having that ability to embrace people for all they are really helps us to come out of our privilege and really understand the experiences of someone else.
Definitely.
Yeah, I
Reggie?
like what both Kendall and Louis are sharing, and I heard some key things in there that I identify with. First and foremost, that you know, there's a difference between faith and religion, um, uh, you know, and the opposite of faith is fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about HIV caused a lot of fear, and it caused people to really reflect on the primal fear that I think most human beings feel. That's the fear of death, or more even hyper than that, the fear of illness, of being sick, of being of suffering, because we saw a lot of that with HIV. And so, I experienced some of that, not only for myself but with others. And so the thing that helped me to practice faith and replace fear with faith, because when I got diagnosed, if I did not have faith in a higher power greater than myself, then I would have been floundering. I wouldn't have had anything to hold on to. My experience uh, as a Black man living in America, you know, had shaken my faith in the human race
Mm.
because it never made sense to me about racism anyway. And then it was even less understandable why we would turn against each other based on our sexual identity or anything. It just didn't make sense. So in order to continue to practice love in this society, it takes faith. And then for me, it took faith in a higher power. And that's what's helped me to overcome the stigma of HIV and AIDS. I never really, I'm sure that people talked about me. I'm sure they said a number of different things. I know that I've been in spaces with same gender loving men, and I know I've been hit on and the whole nine. But having faith in myself and in the power greater than myself has allowed me to navigate, and that's the kind of thing that we want to share with everyone. Uh, especially, and it that same love has allowed me to have a great deal of empathy and compassion, and that's what I heard from you, Lewis, and I continue to hear. For especially the trans community, and the stuff that people are doing now is just criminal, and you know, so it touches my heart as well. So we really have to stick together. Sometimes it is hard to have faith in human beings, but definitely have to continue to practice in order for me. And I see the level of fear as being the common denominator in ignorance. People stop thinking, they stop taking information in. The whole groups come together. What are people afraid of? And in many instances, people are afraid of retribution. From a more cultural sense, but that's a whole nother story. And you know, I understand the concept of exceptionalism of heterosexuals believing that they are the end all and the be all, that they're the standard for human life, but you know it's just not true. And so it's another lie that fear you know uh, helps to amplify and exasperate. And so so yes, but getting back to the church, I've seen a lot of that too. And a lot of misunderstandings. I remember one time I had the opportunity to be in the pulpit. My pastor allowed me to talk to the congregation, and I was able to share, give information. And my wife and I, we told our story. And and as much as I love the pastor, because he had been inundated with all of the misconceptions around HIV, I'm sure he felt it necessary to, after I spoke, to kind of speak to the conservatives in the audience and help them to understand. He started just making aspersions about HIV and as far as relating to gay and this and that. And it's just, I guess, from my perspective as a heterosexual person, it's just watching those things are very interesting. And that's just from my perspective. Can you imagine what it must be like? I can, uh, in the LGBTQIA communities, when you have to add on top of that being Black and being different.
Mhm.
So it's just, faith is something that we have to hold on to. Faith is something that we're going to need if we're going to overcome. And I believe in a higher power. Something, it's going to have to be faith in something that's more than a human being, or if nothing else, faith in the spirit that we see in each other, beyond what we see of each other.
So this is the last question. We have 6 minutes left. Something we really haven't discussed is the $1,000,000 question of, hold on 1 second here. Do we think that cis hetero men are getting a bad rap and that more cis hetero men are in allyship, like yourselves, with gay brothers than is realized? And if so, how do we better celebrate them? And if not, how do we help to do the needed healing to alleviate any barriers and bring together Black men, no matter their sexual orientation? Just a couple minutes each one.
Yeah, I go first because I probably have the least to say because it's quite simple for me. But and for clarity, I'm not a cis heterosexual man. I'm a heterosexual man. Um, what do we do? How do we elevate? How do we continue to support? We continue to love and we accept and we continue to be who we are and allow folks to be who they are. Again, when we start getting into these crevices and getting into these spaces to garner support for a specific way that we want to feel, or the way that we want to be portrayed, or the way that we want it to be acknowledged and seen, we then start becoming a part of what we see other spaces do, which is why we have all of those alphabets when it comes to sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, and again, I'm unapologetically not a cis heterosexual male. I'm a heterosexual male who loves my brothers, Black men, Black women, our community, irregardless of what we categorize one's love for. We still, whether we want to accept it or not, we Black.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got.
That's the way everyone else will see you. You're right. Who wants to go next?
Yeah,
Reggie,
so
Lewis?
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I'm trying to bring my hetero brothers, and I'm using these explanations to try to describe who we are and what we are. But I know if we want to end the epidemic, there is so many heterosexual brothers. If Black women are the fastest rate of new infections, then we as Black men have to protect them. We have to protect our families. We have to protect our entire race. We have to protect the human race. But specifically, we want to protect, Black folks and Black women. And so, yeah, there's a lot of brothers that don't want to have the conversation. They're afraid of being labeled as being gay, and all of that's just crazy. Nobody cares who you're having sex with. We just need you to be honest. We just need you to be honest about whatever it is that you're doing. If you whatever it is you're doing, you know what you're doing. Protect our women. That's the most important thing. And it's a lot of ignorance. I've had a conversation at the barbershop, and there is a lot of ignorance. I actually had to share what my status was at the barbershop, and people think about Magic Johnson's got the cure. You can't. There's just so many misconceptions and myths. There's too many, and so people need to get. If they weren't afraid, I believe, of being identified as being gay, then people would hear information where they're closing it off right now because they don't want to be seen listening to information because of the inference that comes along with it. And, as we used to say around the way in a colloquial way, you can't save your ass and your face at the same time. And, we're just so yeah. My brothers and sisters, have started some groups that and some programs that are prioritizing heterosexuals for the purpose of bringing them into the fold, so that then we can start to have these conversations and break down those barriers. And as people get more information, we're hoping that it will dispel some of the myths and some of the fear, and allow us to have a little bit more faith in each other and empathy for each other, and start to act more like human beings.
Definitely. Lewis, you get the last word.
I guess I'm kind of the reverse of Kendall because I'm an unapologetically cisgender heterosexual man. And I say that because, and I take on the category or the title or label of cisgender heterosexual because, one, it helps to locate me in community. Like I said, if our community is everyone, all that label does is just help to locate me in the community and let people know where I sit as in my community. But the flip side of it as well, that I think is also really important of being a cisgender heterosexual man, is that taking on that title doesn't cost me anything. And oftentimes LGBTQIA plus colleagues, friends, families, they have titles forced on them, whether they like it or not. And that could be same gender loving, that can be trans, that can be gender non-conforming. All of these titles in one way or another can be forced on a person and could overtake their identity, even as a Black person, even as a person of color. And so I think to the original question, like, are cishet men getting a bad rap? I can't say that. I don't know how to answer that question exactly. Are we getting a bad rap? I think we have a lot of blind spots. I think we have a lot of blind spots because we are privileged within the Black community, and that's hard for us, sometimes hard for us to talk about, and hard for us, and maybe even harder for us to see. But we have a lot of privilege. You know, some people have jokingly called Black men the white men of Black people. And so it kind of, you know, it makes sense to me.
Right.
But, you know, because we have so many things that we walk through this world, even as Black men, that we don't have to worry about. We all talked about having partners, particularly partners who are the opposite sex of us. So we're all in heterosexual relationships. So we all can talk about our relationships. We can, you know, go on and on about our partners in a way that I was on a panel with one of my trans masculine colleagues, and he was talking about being a bisexual trans man and how it's so hard to talk about his sexuality with partners. It's hard to talk about his gender identity with partners. It's hard for him to meet people and talk about all these different dynamics of this life. He is doing so much work in this area, and I am doing zero of it because I am a cisgender heterosexual man married to a cisgender heterosexual woman. And so that is my privilege, and that's what I walk in. I get to go and play and just give no energy in the area that my colleague is giving all of this energy in. And so it's something that I try to be mindful of as I walk through the world as a cisgender heterosexual man. And so if taking on that title brings me closer to other people in my community, particularly my LGBTQIA plus community, then so be it. You know, that's a burden that I'm willing to take on, considering all the burdens that people in the LGBTQIA plus community have to take on, whether they like it or not.
Right. So as we close, I want to thank each of you for the open, honest, passionate, and compassionate sharing. Now more than ever in our lifetime, there are so many issues that are confronting us as a community and so many forces that are working to divide us as Black people. We must overcome our ignorance, address our learned or perceived stigmas, and fully embrace that I am my brother's keeper, and I will add my sister's keeper in all that my brother and sister show up as. And if any one of us is hurt or struggles, we all hurt and struggle. And thank you, my brothers, and thank you to our collaborating partners, the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, or HVTN, and the Black Leadership AIDS Crisis Coalition, Black. To learn more about each of them, go to hvtn.org and black.org. And of course, to learn more about HIV/AIDS and where you can know your status and get tested, go to freehivtest.net. Have an amazing rest of the week, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.